Welcome back to Cambodia. I'm at my guest house in Battambang, the newly residence and spa, having just enjoyed a nice breakfast in preparation for a trip into the countryside. I've hired a tuk-tuk and driver/guide who should be along shortly. It's very hot here and is supposed to top 100 degrees Fahrenheit today. So that's a wild card. No guarantees as to what I'll be able to do. We'll just play it by ear and hope for the best. Only 2 trains per day run on this track, and once they pass, it's time for the bamboo train. It's a flatcar that for generations ferried poor residents from the countryside into Battambang and places in between. These days, it's mainly for tourists.
Are you good to go?
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. One more, the last one. 1, 2, 3. When it starts, beware of your property. The railway connection is rock and roll.
Okay. And we're off on the bamboo train. About 4 kilometers from the station from which we left. Shack here with souvenirs and some cold drinks. And the conductor says we've got 5 minutes before the return trip.
West of Europe is the same.
You can see how easy it is to offload the train and turn it around.
My shop me. Well, that's how it's done according to protocol, and the way it's been done for decades when there was a real service on this bamboo line. The heavier train gets the right-of-way. In other words, that's us. We've got 4 passengers. Those other 2 train cars had 2 each. So it's their obligation to clear the tracks for us. Well, it wasn't the Orient Express, but it was a lot of fun. I've come about 7 miles outside Battambang to Phnom Sampeau, or Sampeau Hill, to one of the most extraordinary sights to be found in this countryside. This hill is filled with caves that for centuries have been used as Buddhist temples, and I'm going to enter one of those caves shortly. But the reason people come here is not for the temples. Rather, they come to see the so-called killing caves. During the Cambodian genocide of the 1970s, untold numbers of men, women, and children were brought here by the Khmer Rouge to be slaughtered. Most of the mass killing during that horrible period was done in the 150 to 200 or so-called killing fields, where people were taken into the countryside from the cities and usually bludgeoned to death and their bodies thrown into mass graves. Here it was different. The killing took place on top of the hill, near shafts that open up at the ceiling, and then the bodies were unceremoniously shoved down the shafts. I've walked up to one of these natural openings in the cave, one of the natural shafts that is essentially a large cutout of the ceiling of the cave that caved in at some point in geologic time. It's really hard to imagine this kind of atrocity in the treatment of people. You could come here without this horrible history being part of the story and really appreciate it for what it is, but because of that history, it's hard to see the beauty here, the natural beauty. I'm walking over now to one side of this cave. There's a shrine just to my left that I'm passing. You'll see evidence of people who died brutally here. It's a horrible reminder of the mindless brutality of which humans are capable. A reminder with, unfortunately, not an expiration date when you consider that genocides elsewhere in the world continue unabated. On a more pleasant note, there's a natural phenomenon here that's unrelated to the murder and mayhem that took place here. This cave and others like it are inhabited by bats, scores of thousands, maybe even millions of bats. If you're here near sunrise or sunset, it's possible to see them leaving and entering the caves in mass numbers. I'm here toward the middle of the day. I won't see any bats in all likelihood unless I see one hanging on the wall, but they're probably back a bit deeper than I've chosen to climb. It's very much a reason why early bird tourists come to watch the flight of the bats. Battambang province is the rice bowl of Cambodia, and you can certainly tell that when you get out into the countryside, because there are rice fields everywhere. The one behind me, of course, has just been harvested on the side of the highway. There's something else. The drainage canals are essentially lotus ponds.
If you're like me, the lotus is little more than something pretty to look at. But as my guide Jan points out, it's a lot more than that to Cambodians.
The lotus is very, very useful plant. For the leaf, we use to bake the food. For the flower, we use for pray for the Buddha. But for the leaf of the flower, we can use for make lotus teas. For the fruit, young one, we can eat the seed. The seed is a little bit sweet. And then when they get ripe, we use to make dessert, or we can boil it. For the tree, we can take a silk from the tree. We can produce for make scarf. The root, like the small like the finger, we use to make vegetable. And when they get bigger, like the arm, we use to make powder.
Rice farmers in this region grow 2 crops per year. There's summer rice and there's winter rice. Land does not go to waste. In these fields, cows are grazing on this just harvested rice field. I stopped at the village of Umpumpal, and as you can tell, I'm walking across a suspension bridge over the Sanghae River. The river is wider here, certainly more scenic, with trees on both sides. I think I mentioned that the city of Battambang has a population of only about 150,000 people, and yet it's the nodal city of the province. Whereas the province itself has 1.5 million people living in rural areas and in just tons of small villages. Of course, you see the requisite rice fields, but not only that, you see orchards, fruit plantations, lots of bananas, papaya, mango, really beautiful. Of course, it's tropical, it's hot, and it's humid. It's also very pleasant at the same time, and the tranquility of these villages makes it worth getting out of the cities just to explore. My guide has just brought something to my attention that I have to show you before we go any farther. When we were at the caves, I told you that we wouldn't expect to see any bats, but I've walked up to a tree that's filled with fruit bats. Well, I don't know that you can see them with this camera lens that I'm using, but they're there, clearly visible. This tree, which I cannot pronounce, produces a fruit that's inedible to the bats. They do not digest it. So why are these bats hanging around? No pun intended. It's for their protection. Protection from hunters. We're in a village where there's a local police presence, plus the head monk, who would make sure that people wouldn't come up here with guns and start shooting bats out of trees. Why would they do that? The answer might surprise you. It's for food. That is not to suggest that bats are a standard part of the Cambodian diet. They are not. But there are certain mountain people among the residents of this area who do eat bats and consider them a delicacy. That's why these bats are here in this village. It's their home. They come and go from here. They fly out mornings and afternoon. They come back to the tree. But this is where they hang. They're just fluttering like leaves, which I guess if you're a bat, it's the only way you can flutter.
Next from Cambodia, a magnificent Angkor Dynasty ruin few visitors ever see.
Pieces are just lying around randomly.